When the first ships arrived, we were thrilled. They moved with a speed and grace that had previously seemed unimaginable. Contact with an alien civilization. We tried for 2 long years to establish communication, even launching a spacecraft in an attempt to reach them. However, they remained unresponsive, seemingly indifferent to our efforts. 2 years later, when the other ships appeared, the battle lasted less than 30 seconds. Both sides fought fiercely, unleashing weapons that tore through the opposing vessels without mercy. The first ships were destroyed, and the second group departed. Much discussion followed as we tried to understand the reasons behind this conflict. We ultimately concluded that there were 2 warring factions, though we knew little about their motivations or allegiances. What was meant to be a first contact mission became a salvage operation. We had limited knowledge of the alien technology, but we recognized its potential. A decade later, we had reverse-engineered their weapons and propulsion systems. Humanity had spread to every planet in the system, and in less than a decade, we had left our homeworld behind. We always knew they would return, though we could not predict when or how. Our finest military minds analyzed the battle countless times, and we conducted skirmishes with our reverse-engineered weapons, contemplating how to wage a war in space. In the last 10 years, we had built roughly 1,000 warships. When we detected not 1 but 2 warp signatures about to arrive, we were ready. I stood on the bridge of the flagship, IWS Enterprise, watching the tactical screen as 2 massive fleets dropped out of warp. One matched the first fleet, the other the second. Both were formidable, each easily twice the size of our own. I took a deep breath. "Open all hailing frequencies. Transmit the diplomatic package," I instructed. "We shall see if they respond this time." Then I turned towards the camera. The new language the Empire had adopted to communicate with the aliens did not flow from my tongue with ease. However, what I was about to say next had been well rehearsed. "This is Grand Admiral Halcyon, aboard the IWS Enterprise, addressing all unknown craft on behalf of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Ban Ki-moon. State your intentions within the Sol Empire. End message." I reverted to my native English to address my bridge crew. "Maneuver the fleet away from the 2 other fleets. I want it clear we are a third party to this. Should they engage, I do not wish to be caught in the crossfire." There was a brief acknowledgement, and we waited. The 2 fleets still had their weapons powered up, but they had not fired. My guess is that they were analyzing each other, and us just as intently as we were analyzing them. We are detecting messages from both fleets, but they have not yet communicated with us. The analysis indicates they are uncertain of our allegiance and thus cannot commit to battle. I nodded, unsurprised. "Do you believe they received our message?" I asked. "Certainly, there was a significant spike in traffic when they received it. What we do not know is how they interpret our message. If they are in space, I'd assume they understand mathematics. True, but we cannot predict how they will comprehend the message, or if they will remain hostile regardless." The 3 fleets remained in space with some minor maneuvering. I kept our fleet neutral. It was several hours before we received a reply. "This is Admiral Name. Are you with us or against us?" The first fleet responded in plain text. We soon received a similar message from the second fleet. "Transmit this response. We are neutral in this current conflict. We do not seek confrontation with either of you and would be willing to mediate a mutually beneficial peace between the 3 of us," I ordered. The tech nodded, encoding the message and dispatching it to the 2 parties. "As anticipated, Admiral, neither side possesses the means to prevail over the other without our intervention." I inquired, "Do you believe we can leverage this into peaceful negotiations?" "Possibly, though we still lack sufficient information." "Very well, but ready a diplomatic vessel." "Yes, sir." Once more we waited. The text reported the 2 fleets were exchanging messages. Eventually, we received what appeared to be a unified response. "Both fleets will withdraw at this time. We will each leave a single diplomatic ship here so that we may establish diplomatic relations with the Sol Empire." I nodded, relieved that first contact had not escalated into conflict. However, the true challenge was about to begin. The IWS Enterprise hovered in space, flanked by the 2 alien ships. On the bridge, Fletcher sat, striving to appear at ease, though he was anything but. In moments, ambassadors from both races would appear on the screens. The translators had collaborated with their counterparts from the other races to enhance the common system. Fletcher did not fully comprehend the translation process, only that it was based on the mathematics governing the communication array's transuranic elements. As such, the language was highly symbolic, logical, and mathematical. Physics seemed to be the sole commonality they shared, necessitating reliance on this foundation. The initial language they had created lacked the vocabulary to serve as an effective communication tool. "Gratitude for your attendance at this gathering," I said, commencing. The Flowen responded, "I shall not linger on social niceties, as we yet lack the familiarity." I continued, "I trust you will forgive any social missteps by myself or the other delegates. Being filled with nourishment makes you larger and thus harder to consume. We believe you are being extended the social capital for any blunders. Thank you. The first matter we should address is the conflict between the Flowen and the Zival. Can you tell me about it?" Akin to a vicious cycle. We are parallel. There were rare attempts to contact others, but none succeeded. The first time we spoke with anyone not of our kind was with you and the Flowen. Had it been you or the Flowen alone, we could have secured victory. However, combined, we could not. Roughly, we are in accord, or we are progressing together. Contextually, we believe it means they share the same narrative as the Zival. So why does no one seek peace with them as well? I inquired, somewhat perplexed. It seemed their conflict lacked clear rationale. Peace is what we all desire, yet without communication there can be no peace. If we cannot converse, then peace remains elusive. I take offense to that. You do have a point. The situation was becoming clearer now. So what if you both simply cease? I inquired. Cease what? The war. At present, our three races have an opportunity for peace. If we declare that from this point forward, we will stop fighting each other, then communication can do its work. Certainly, there may be matters on which we disagree, but we can resolve them here. This will strengthen us all, as we will have two fewer adversaries to concern ourselves with. Emperor Ban Ki-moon has granted me the authority to do more than merely broker peace between us. He has also empowered me to forge an alliance with one or both of your races. We could be an alliance that fights together, making all of us more secure and stronger. There is always the risk of betrayal. How can we trust you or them? You cannot, not yet. Trust is earned over time. Let me ask you, if presented with such an opportunity, would you intentionally betray it? Not intentionally. It is the same for all three of us. So let us extend a measure of hope here and strive to come together. What we need now is the ability to build FTL ships. Then we can redirect the fleets we would otherwise use to fight each other and create the largest fleet the galaxy has ever seen. We offer this peace to anyone willing to listen and join, making us even stronger. I do not know what my government will say to this. As I will, we should convene here once more to witness their response. It shall be done. Is there any other matter we must discuss now? I inquired, for the proceedings seemed to progress smoothly, surprising me with their ease. The simplest route is ever fraught. A voice at the back of my mind cautioned as we concluded the meeting. I observed the two vessels vanish into the warp, pondering which minefield we would encounter first. The alliance was young, the Flowen and the Zival having agreed to a truce, and we would monitor the borders using their warp technology. Warp technology depends on post-transuranic elements, PTUs, that can't be easily made unless you are at a node. Nodes are hard to find, and it's much easier to detect if someone is already at a node. This leads to a lot of wars over nodes. They had been fighting over a node close to Earth. Part of the agreement was that we would be the caretakers of the node, and its PTUs would be split three ways. This arrangement worked well for a few months. Then our node went black, someone had taken it. We all wanted the node back, so for the first time, all three of our militaries were working together. We dropped out of warp first. Our warp-capable ships were still small in number, but we were the ones who understood the translation algorithm the best. The species that had attacked our node was listed in the database we were creating as only species 626, no proper name known. Then again, there were only 3 species with a proper name in the database. Species 1, human. Species 2, Floen. Species 3, Zavale. Some might think that making ourselves Species 1 is a bit human-centered. My point of view is that it is our database. We get dibs. The Floen were the ships that had initially came, so they were Species 2. The Zavale destroyed the scouting fleet and became Species 3. After that, it was more or less arbitrary which race was which. Merging the Floen and the Zavale database on alien races had been hard work, but worth it for the intelligence it contained. Upon our arrival in the system, we transmitted the translation package we had prepared. Unlike with the Floen and the Zavale, whose computer systems we had been able to observe for a decade, our knowledge of 626 was limited, based solely on observations from their combat records. We suspected that 626 was also a carbon-based life form with a similar temperature range to our own, but these were mere suppositions. The plan was straightforward. Warp in, inquire about their attack on humanity's node, and await their response. We hoped our overwhelming firepower would deter them from opening fire. The plan proceeded flawlessly for approximately 30 seconds. Then the Floen and the Zavale dropped out of warp and opened fire. The display of massed firepower was truly remarkable. The fleet protecting the node had only begun to react to our presence. A dreadnought and its escorts, no insignificant force. Faced with our massed fleet and recognizing their inability to prevail, the commander of the 626 fleet opted to retreat. There was no time to reprimand either Admiral Sweet Sapphire Ku of the Floen or Archon Terminus of the Zavale about the unexpected turn of events. We had been prepared for the possibility of resistance to our plan. I gritted my teeth as they had propelled us all the way from Plan A to Plan E. It is time for Plan E. Launch the salvage corvettes and capture as many 626 crew as possible, I ordered. Also, advise the admirals that if possible, we want to disable their ships, not destroy them. Admiral Cerulean. Sapphire Wave inquired. Capture? I'm not sure I understand this concept. I looked to our Floen cultural expert and the translation team. We're trying to integrate 626 into our alliance, not eliminate them, I explained. Admiral Cerulean. Sapphire. Wave, to catch a meal. Do you have to hold it still before you eat it? I shot a frustrated look at the Floen cultural expert and translation team. So far, their analogy had been less than helpful. Admiral, have you ever had to stabilize a tool before you could use it? I asked. Okay, in essence, that's what we need to do with the Species 626 ships. We are going to employ their crew and ships, but we need to hold them still first. So we must ensure they cannot flee or retaliate. With that, our conversation concluded. I watched the screen as the Floen ships swooped around our edges. There was a certain beauty in the way they prosecuted their attacks. The Zavale ships, by contrast, relied on their tough armor and shields as they pounded away at their enemies. Amidst them were our ships, striving to close any gaps in the line before the foes could exploit them. Our formation was tenuous, the Floen too distant to safeguard the Zavale ships, and the Zavale too slow to catch the fleeing 626 ships. We were endeavoring to hold things together, but had the enemy been assailing us and exploiting our weaknesses, I'm certain we would have lost the battle. It concluded swiftly, an alliance victory, if just barely. I hope the failure of our Plan A had merely been a communication mistake. However, in war, such errors could prove costly, the alliance too fragile to sustain such risks. I scanned the room for Dr. Liang, the head of the department. He was apparently gone. However, a young Hawaiian-looking scientist was present. Her white coat contrasted with her dark skin and eyes. She greeted me with a warm smile as she extended her hand. Admiral, Dr. Liang asked me to show you around upon your arrival. I firmly shook her hand, pleasantly surprised by the firm handshake in return. Thank you, Dr. Kalani. What is our status on Species 626, I asked. Species 626 is carbon-based, as we suspected, sir. They can survive in standard conditions. We've managed to conduct 4 autopsies on their deceased. Although we were once surprised by Subject 9 not being as lifeless as we had thought, it managed to maul 2 scientists before losing consciousness again. We are trying to assess if they may have contracted any cross-species bacteria or viruses. We were able to save Subject 9's life, but we were largely just undoing the damage we had caused. Subject 7 is conscious, and we are only just beginning to study it. She led me through the lab to the observation room, where I could see the member of species 626. The observation room had several scientists taking notes, most of them preferring to use the cameras. Species 626 resembled a squat blue koala with 6 limbs and huge ears. The one in the observation chamber appeared bored. Species 626 comes from a world with greater gravity than Earth. Their muscles are dense. They communicate through some form of speech. We've had some vocalizations, but not enough to build a database. It sounds akin to roars to our ears, but we are assured it possesses sufficient flexibility to function as a language. So what's the plan? I asked. Well, we've got a lot of fancy data gathering and analysis tools, but at the moment, the same way that Europeans learn the languages of the Native Americans, pointing at stuff and trying to build a lexicon. That sounds low-tech. It is, mostly. Would you care to observe it more closely? Certainly, I responded, making my way to a seat. Dr. Kalani gestured for me to follow, leading me towards a side door. As I passed through, the room before me resembled a children's play area, filled with blocks and toys of all kinds, from simple wooden sets to the latest gaming platforms. Spacesuits also lined the walls. Unsure of what she expected, I glanced at her. Please, take a bag of blocks, she instructed. Are you sure it's safe? We have no idea how it might react, I voiced my concern. We'll be observing from behind a thick glass wall, and there's a decontamination chamber to pass items back and forth, she reassured me. I nodded, picking up a bag and following her into the next room. Through the large glass barrier, I could see specimen 626, Seren, who perked up at our arrival but made no move towards or away from us. All right, place the bag of blocks in the decontamination chamber, and let's see what happens, she said. I did as instructed, and we sat down with another bag of blocks. Seren approached cautiously, retrieving the bag and bringing it to the center of the room, beginning to sort the blocks by color. Seren seemed to have a system, though it was unclear to us. Once the blocks were arranged, Seren looked back at us. Dr. Kalani picked up a block, saying 1. Seren responded with a distinct vocalization, then mirrored the action, taking a block of its own. Dr. Kalani added a second block, gesturing to indicate she meant both. 2. Seren repeated the sequence, its own call slightly different. They continued counting the blocks for a time, Seren appearing to cooperate with our efforts. Afterward, they moved on to addition, with a few initial missteps as Seren worked to understand our requests. However, within about half an hour, we could direct Seren to add and subtract blocks, both in our language and in Seren's, though the creature seemed surprised when we first made a request based on its own speech patterns. My communicator vibrated, and I retrieved an earbud, answering the call. This is Admiral Halcyon. Admiral, this is Commander Zhao in engineering. We have something you'll want to see. What is it, Commander? I inquired. Species 626 uses similar hyperspace engines as we do. Why is that important? I asked. Our designs are derived from the Zavali and the Floen, sir. I'll head down immediately, I said, rising. Doctor, it's been a pleasure, but I must be going. It's been a joy showing you our work. I hope you'll visit again, Dr. Kalani replied, shaking my hand. With that, I departed for engineering. 2 weeks later, I stood on a research station on Pluto. Pluto was rather unremarkable as far as objects so far outside the solar system go, but it had the distinction of once being a planet. I had been in college when it was first demoted. At the time, my astronomy class had been consumed by debates over Pluto's planetary status. I had argued it should remain a planet. Crimson Nas, Amber Splash, and their translator arrived. They were enclosed in a special clear container on legs that allowed them to move around in Earth-standard conditions. They resembled a blob of moving red jelly with silver flakes, larger than a human. They had wanted the container to be flying, but that proved impractical. Sight was not a primary sense for the Floen. Touch and hydrodynamics were. I nodded. Thank you, Bitter Red Plop. Allow me to introduce you to the others. I'm sure you already know Dr. Cao Wenjia. I gestured to the tall, thin Asian man. And Archon Novum Octo Quindecum. I nodded at the Zivale in its encounter suit, a large metal rock that slid across the ground on hundreds of tiny feet, with a single manipulation arm hidden at the front. 20 Sirens seem to prefer asking their translator to handle things. I'm sure you're not familiar with Siren, a member of species 626. I gestured to Siren. Siren is a POW we captured after a recent battle. They were a warrant officer working on their warp engines. We're still translating, but there's enough to discuss what I've called you all here for today. Siren has agreed to assist us with this matter. I turned to the screen. As you know, our warp engines share the same underlying physics principles. Our four species have different primary senses. Humans rely on sight, Flowen on fluid dynamics, Zavale on magnetism, and species 626 on sound. This raises the question of why all the warp drives we've encountered, from species 94, 384, 23, 163, 286, 519, 410, and 702, are so similar. While no two are identical, they share common design elements pointing to a single original source. I clicked through slides highlighting the similarities. The room fell silent as the three of them studied the information. Siren was the first to speak, a series of barks and growls. Dr. Kalani quickly clarified the question and statement, occasionally consulting the translation team. Admiral, Siren says their species 626 didn't develop the warp drive themselves. They found it in a comet headed for their homeworld about 150 years ago. It turned out to be an ancient ship, not a comet. Crimson Amber Bossat's Splash added, converting the timelines, it seems to be around the same period. Archon Novem Octo Quinta team asked, if we're all so similar, why didn't the humans obtain this ship? And why would an unknown species do something like this? Those are excellent questions, Dr. 1020 Saren. Unfortunately, I do not have any answers for you. Our analysts believe the perpetrator is playing a very long game. Separate evolution cannot possibly explain how four species independently reach space within 2 centuries of each other. I suspect others will echo this sentiment. So what course of action do we take? Dr. Yishi inquired. If we are following some kind of cosmic blueprint, I think we need to veer off the path and go our own way. Society is unity and diversity, as George Herbert Mead once said. Crimson Amber Splash asked, regardless of their intentions, I wager they did not anticipate our collaboration. More precisely, that we, from such disparate species, would unite. We do not even share the same biochemistry, let alone psychology. Depending on one's perspective, there are around 50 unique biochemistries among the roughly 700 species we have surveyed so far. Even within a single biochemistry, there are numerous factors that can differ. Size, communication methods, evolutionary history. As one of our great authors once observed, we inhabit a universe characterized by diversity, and that was when we thought we were alone. He also said, differences are not intended to separate, to alienate. We are different precisely in order to realize our need of one another. This is the philosophy we wish to bring to the table. To this end, we have begun designing a new class of ships to carry this vision to the stars. The IWS Enterprise was a prototype, and we now look forward to its successor class. We seek your assistance in shaping this new design. Here on Pluto, we have assembled some of humanity's finest starship designers. We want a vessel that will take us all to the stars together. You create tolerance through exposure, and that is precisely what we aim for these ships to achieve. This is unwise. The Zavale have no desire to participate in your plan to provoke a galactic upheaval. If that is your wish, then we only request peace between our peoples. If it can be achieved, we appreciate your time, and now we shall depart. I watched them leave, their reaction unsurprising as they valued stability. My gaze shifted to Crimson, Amber, Splash. And you? I inquired. The current seldom takes you where you wish to go, but rather where it desires. If you wish to reach your destination, you must fight the current. Subject Seren uttered several phrases. Dr. Kalani translated. Subject Seren says they will endeavor to bring peace. They agree that if there is a great cosmic master, then we must be its servants. She looked quizzically at Seren, who spoke further. Servants fight for their freedom, for that is their nature. Dr. Kalani seemed slightly perplexed. I apologize. I'm uncertain my translation is accurate. Well, I suppose that means we must locate species 626, I said. I apologize, Seren. Seren turned slowly towards the door. After working with them for a month, I was starting to grasp Seren's emotional state. It seems so pointless. I want them to hear my voice, to hear our voice. We don't have to fight alone anymore. We don't have to fall silent like this. I vow we'll find them, Seren. We'll seek peace. We'll uncover a node your people have not yet lost. Seren nodded, walking out of the room to find Novum. Novum was what could be described as a berserker. Novum still attacked everyone who tried to approach him except Seren. He was not stupid. His constant escape attempts were the bane of security. However, he and Seren seemed to have some sort of connection from before. He was more docile around her. However, he was also stubborn. Much as I liked Seren, they showed another side to Species 626, the warriors. It was the warriors that frightened me. Seren had shared much about her people's culture. They had attained political unity following their first war with Species 439, who had mercilessly bombarded their planet with asteroids. Species 626 had completed their extermination 2 years prior. Species 626 seemed to have two modes, ferocious allies or equally ferocious enemies. They valued loyalty and stability, seeing a plan through to the end. If they were enemies with the Floen, it was going to be difficult to make them change course. They would see our allying with the Floen as meaning that we were their enemy too. Seren had explained that they chose to be loyal to us because we had saved them from death. Novum, on the other hand, saw cooperating with us as a betrayal. I had asked why the two of them still seemed to like one another. Seren's response had been cryptic. Novum has heard my second heartbeat. Dr. Kalani had spent a while trying to figure out the reason. Species 626 has such great hearing and echolocation that they can hear the heart beating inside of someone. They also have two hearts that beat in unison. To hear someone else's second heartbeat means that you know them well enough that you can separate out each heart and hear its beat independently of the others. I was soon joined on the observation deck by Crimson, Amber, Splash. Finding Species 626 has been arduous for them. We keep encountering battles their species has lost, with no survivors. I believe they desire someone else to converse with, beyond Novum. Do you suspect Novum may sway Seren's perspective? I nodded. I don't believe you've come merely to discuss Seren. I don't think we can accomplish this alone. That is the crux of the matter. I nodded, turning to the screen. Show me what you have. A map of the warp lanes appeared, 3 stars illuminated. I nodded, sliding the earbuds from my collar. Helm, plot the following course, and proceed with haste. 2 days later, I stood on the bridge with Crimson, Amber, Just Splash, Subject Seren, and Dr. Kalani as our fleet emerged from warp. We're receiving a hail from Species 626. I glanced at Seren, who sat in their chair, appearing content yet slightly anxious, as we had not even begun broadcasting. They were prepared for our arrival, their formation reflecting this. That happened quickly, I murmured to myself. On screen, I said louder. Do I not transform my enemies into friends? Abraham Lincoln. I see you have reviewed the historical and cultural information we provided with our first message. I appreciate your consideration of that. We come under a white flag of peace. Will you honor that? I asked. The tactical overview showed the Groran fleet taking up holding patterns just out of range. I understand, Admiral. Today I'm here with an ambassador from the Floen, Bitter Red Plop. I hope you will extend to them the same courtesy you do to me. We are here to negotiate peace between our 3 great peoples. We acquired 2 prisoners of war during our battle. As a gesture of goodwill, we would return them to you. Crimson Moss. Amber Splash's encounter suit glided to stand alongside me. I was not skilled at reading Groaran emotions, but the Admiral seemed taken aback by this. Thank you for your gift, Admiral. I trust you have treated them honorably. Seren's chatter took a moment for the translation team to finish. They heard our pleas for help and answered them. When they understood that I would not try to deafen them, they allowed me to travel the length and breadth of their ship so that I may listen to their heartbeats. I have heard their second heartbeat, Admiral. They truly want peace. We do not ask that we trust each other, just that the war between us end. A recognition that our nodes are ours and your nodes are yours, and that we will not try to take them from each other. What do you seek from this peace? I asked. We face challenges from multiple fronts. Even if we do speak peace with the Flowen and you, our struggle has always been uphill. We hear enemies approaching from all directions, not just yours. A peace will mean nothing if we end soon anyway. A peace has been forged with the Zivale, allowing us to redirect our resources elsewhere. We can also offer assistance in your own peace efforts. Our desire is for all species in the galaxy to work together harmoniously rather than against one another. If you choose to join us in building this new future, there may be a place for you, even if you are defeated. Admiral Grothril, we have received the prisoners you returned to us. I thank you for this. I have a few questions. We heard reports of 3 fleets attacking during our last engagement. What became of the Zival? The Zival departed our alliance after we informed them of our intent to disrupt the plans of a mysterious race we call the Progenitors, who seem to be manipulating the galaxy. Our aim is to build an alliance of as many races as possible. The heart of the Empire beats for peace, but we are prepared to back our words with force if necessary. I am transmitting the data we uncovered to you now. Why should we join this alliance of yours? There are a number of reasons. First, it will mean peace for you and your race. Second, it will mean an exchange of mutually beneficial ideas and goods. Third, it means that you will not be a slave to the fate that someone else assigns you. You will have a say in where fate will take you. Fourth, if someone comes to bombard your world, the Empire will be there for you. Our first and fourth emperors, Yi and Ban, both lost their homes to devastating attacks. We have heard the heartbeat of that pain. The Empire is built on honor. Our first emperor fought for the honor of his nation, then when called upon, the honor of our whole world. The imperial princes who have ascended to the throne have upheld the empire and sought to strengthen it as a whole. Emperor Ban sought to make not just the humans strong, but also the Flowen, and while they were with us, the Zival strong as well. His successor, Empress Kaiser, ensured that all our treaty obligations were upheld to the letter. The empire has ensured that the joint node controlled by them made all of the deliveries of PTUs on time. They have helped us keep our peace with the Zivale, being both fair and honorable in their arbitration of the disputes that have arisen.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.